They were not monsters. They were not fanatic. They were boys, barely 20, writing their last letters to the world. Letters that began with love and ended with death. In 1944, Japan was on the brink of collapse. The mighty empire that once ruled across Asia was falling under the weight of American firepower. Cities burned, ships sank, and in the skies above the Pacific, hope was dying. Then, from the ashes of despair came an idea, desperate, divine, and deadly. They called it Kamikaze. It meant divine wind, the same word once used for the storms that saved Japan centuries ago from Mongol invasion. But now it meant something else. Young men flying to their death, believing that by dying, they could save their homeland. In late 1944, Admiral Takejiro Onishi gathered his pilots and said, "Japan's salvation depends on your self-sacrifice. Will you give your lives for your country?" Every man in that room stepped forward. Not one hesitated. Some smiled, others trembled, but all signed their names to fate. These were not madmen. They were students, poets, sons. Many had never flown a real mission before. Their letters reveal who they truly were. Not soldiers of hate, but human beings caught in a war they could not win. Private Hiroshi Kuroki, age 21, wrote to his mother, "Dear mother, when you hear of my death, please rejoice. I have done what I must for Japan. My only regret is that I could not live longer to take care of you." He ended with a line that broke every reader's heart. "I will fly tomorrow at dawn. Please look up at the sky and know that your son is smiling." Many of these letters were written in neat handwriting on thin rice paper. They were folded carefully, placed in envelopes, and handed to officers who promised to send them home after the mission. Some pilots attached photographs of themselves, smiling in uniform, so their mothers would remember them as brave, not broken. The night before their missions was eerily peaceful. The pilots gathered in their wooden barracks, drinking sake, singing old songs, and writing letters under candlelight. They laughed like children, but behind every smile was a trembling heart. Lieutenant Yukio Seki, one of the first kamikaze leaders, said quietly to a friend, "Japan is finished, but if my death can delay defeat by one day, it is worth it." He knew the truth. These missions would not win the war, but still he climbed into his plane, a Zero fighter, loaded with a 250-kilo bomb, and flew into history. At dawn, the engines roared to life. Each pilot carried a small piece of paper, a prayer to the emperor, a lock of hair, or a good luck charm. They bowed before the rising sun and shouted, "Tenno Heika Banzai," translated, "Long live the emperor," and took off, one by one. On the ground, mechanics cried silently. They knew they would never see these young faces again. From the control tower, the radio crackled with the final words of a kamikaze. "I am now going to attack. Please convey my love to my family. Banzai!" Moments later, static filled the air. Then silence. Far across the ocean, American sailors looked up and saw them coming. Tiny silver planes diving from the clouds, burning with the light of a dying empire. They came not to survive, but to strike. Each explosion tore through steel and flame. Each impact carried a human life, a son, a letter, a dream. And as the waves swallowed the wreckage, those letters were all that remained. Letters never meant to be famous, but to be remembered. Because in those final words, written before death, we glimpse not the face of an enemy, but of a man who loved his mother, his home, and his country. When the sun rose over the Pacific, those who had taken off at dawn were already gone. But back at the air bases of Kyushu, Japan, others waited, waiting for their turn, waiting for death. The officers gathered the remaining men and read the reports. 2 American carriers hit, 3 destroyers damaged. No mention of the lives lost. No mention of the pilots who never returned. But among the young airmen, there was silence, not celebration. They knew what awaited them. Every breakfast could be their last. Every sunrise, a final farewell. In the corner of the barracks, One pilot quietly opened his note. His name was Shunsuke Tomiyasu. Just 19 years old, he wrote, "When I close my eyes, I see my sister's smile. I hear the temple bells of home. Tomorrow, I will never see them again. Yet, I am not afraid. I only hope my death will make her proud." He folded the page, kissed it once, and placed it inside his flight jacket, close to his heart. Despite the image of fearlessness Japan's military wanted to show, many kamikaze pilots were deeply conflicted. They were raised to believe dying for the emperor was the greatest honor, but inside, they were still boys, afraid of pain, of loneliness, of leaving behind those they love. Quote, "I do not wish to die, but I cannot live when my country calls for death. I write these words not as a hero, but as a son." It was this quiet sorrow, not hatred, that defined them. Each one carried the burden of duty and the weight of love. One pilot, Masao Ito, never managed to send his final letter. He was too emotional to finish writing it. The half-written page was later found in his belongings. "Father, I remember when you taught me to ride a bicycle. I fell, and you lifted me. Now I fly into the sky, and I know no one will lift me again." The letter ended there, a sentence without a period, a story without an ending. When American forces later recovered his wrecked aircraft near Okinawa, they found his name tag still pinned to his chest. He was 20. Before every mission, each pilot underwent a ritual called Senjin-kun, a ceremony reminding them that surrender was dishonor and death was glory. They would bow before the emperor's portrait, receive a white silk headband with the red sun symbol, and drink a final cup of sake. Quote, "Many cried quietly during those moments. They tried to hide it, but I saw tears fall onto the floor." End quote. Even in the face of death, they remained human, fragile, trembling, yet unbroken. American sailors later recalled hearing the faint radio calls of approaching kamikaze planes. Some voices were calm, others trembling. One pilot, moments before diving, said over the radio, "Mother, I can see the sea. It is beautiful." Then, silence. That single sentence became a symbol of everything the kamikaze truly were. Not monsters, not machines, but young men who saw beauty in their final seconds. After the war had ended, thousands of these farewell letters were collected by families. Some were hidden away, never shown to the public. Others were published by historians, revealing an emotional truth Japan had long buried. In one of the most famous letters, pilot Ryoji Uehara wrote, "Please do not think I am dying a glorious death. I am dying because I was told to. My only wish is that one day no mother will ever have to lose her son to war." Those words, simple, honest, heartbreaking, echo louder today than any explosion ever did. The legacy of the divine wind. The kamikaze program would continue until the very end of the war. More than 3,800 pilots died in suicide attacks. Most were under 22 years old. Few ever hit their targets, but every one of them believed their death might protect their homeland. And when we read their letters today, we don't see hatred or nationalism. We see grief, love, and sacrifice. They wrote not for glory, but for remembrance. They wanted their mothers to know that they were not afraid and that they were thinking of home until their very last breath. The war was reaching its final breath. By mid-1945, Japan's cities were in ruins. Tokyo burned, Hiroshima and Nagasaki yet to face their fate. But still the kamikaze flights continued. Every morning new names appeared on the mission list. Every evening the barracks grew quieter. They knew the end was near, and still they wrote, "The calm before death." One night, a pilot named Kazuo Yamashita, only 20 years old, sat beneath a cherry tree near the airfield. The blossoms had fallen, scattered by the wind. He whispered to the night, Even the flowers fall before their time. Maybe that is what I must do too. He took out a small notebook and began to write his final words. To my beloved family, when you receive this, I will be gone. Do not cry. The cherry blossoms fall beautifully, and I hope my death will be like that. He placed the notebook under his pillow, smiled once, and closed his eyes. He would never wake again. The average age of a kamikaze pilot was just 21 years. Most had never known love, never held a child, never seen the world beyond their island. They were dreamers, forced into a nightmare. In another letter, a pilot named Takeshi Enomoto wrote to his fiancée, "I wish I could have walked with you by the river once more. I wish I could have grown old with you, but this wish will stay only in my heart. When I dive, I will think of your smile. That will be my heaven." His words were gentle, but they carried the weight of eternity. The pilots lined up in the briefing room. Maps were drawn on chalkboards, arrows pointing toward the enemy fleet. Each man was handed a small envelope. Inside was his target and his death sentence. "Your mission will bring honor to your families. You are the shields of Japan." Some bowed deeply. Some clenched their fists, but none spoke. Outside, rain began to fall. It was as if the heavens themselves were mourning. Moments before takeoff. The next morning, the rain had cleared. Sunlight broke through the clouds as the engines roared to life. Pilots stood beside their planes, receiving one final gift. A white scarf tied around their neck fluttered in the wind like wings made of silk. Mechanics, friends, and officers gathered for one last salute. They shouted "Banzai!" and one by one the planes lifted off into the morning sky. On the ground, silence followed, a silence so heavy it pressed against the hearts of everyone left behind. From the air, the world below looked peaceful. The green mountains, the blue ocean, the shining horizon. For a few minutes, they were free. No fear, no order, just the wind and the endless sky. But soon the radio crackled with final words. "This is Yamashita. I see the target. Mother, forgive me." Then static. An American warship spotted a small black dot diving from the clouds. Anti-aircraft guns opened fire. But the plane kept coming, unstoppable, and then impact. A flash of fire, a sound that shook the sea, and one more young life disappeared into history. After the storm, back in Japan, the families received wooden boxes. Inside, no body, only ashes, and a small note from the Imperial Army. "Your son has died with honor for the Emperor." Mothers held those boxes to their hearts. Some wept, some smiled through tears. They told themselves, "He died bravely." But years later, when the war was over, many of those same mothers opened the old letters again and cried for the boy, not the soldier. Those letters became Japan's most painful treasure. They were read in schools, displayed in museums, and kept in families for generations. They showed not just courage, but confusion, fear, and love. One historian wrote, "In every letter, there is one common thing, the longing to live." That's the truth of the kamikaze. They didn't want to die. They wanted their deaths to mean something. And in that desire, we find something hauntingly human. The war was ending, but for those who remained, the letters were all they had. A final voice from the lost, carried across time by the wind, the same divine wind they once believed in.